Hi, I'm Rana Gupta, and we have a series of modules for you to talk about finance. Why? Because an SBIR and STTR grant actually, believe it or not, fits into a larger financial plan. It's not enough to say I have to put some money in the bank. It's actually reasonably complex. And understanding the context of a grant in a larger plan is very important to your success. So as innovators and as researchers, what we like to talk about is products, markets, doctors, customers, certainly the technology. What we hate talking about is finance. Think of it this way. Finance is to business as running is to gym class. Remember when the gym teacher said, "Today we're going to run," and everybody just sighed? Well, today we're going to talk about finance. Before you start sighing, let's use life as an analog. Before we jump into business jargon, let's talk about a few skills in life that we can use and transfer here so we can understand the complexities in the larger context of a financial plan. Let me introduce a few terms to get started. First word, constraints. What are the two most important constraints in life? Time and money. Pretty much everything we do in life is according to those two constraints. How long will it take and how much will it cost? So all the goals that we've achieved thus far are within those two constraints. Second word, plan. Now we formulate a plan in order to navigate constraints. Here's a simple situation. You say to yourself, I have $5 and half an hour and I have to eat lunch. How many times have you had to do that? So quickly, you formulate a plan. Those are your two constraints, $5 and half an hour. We know how to formulate that plan so that by the end of a half an hour, we've eaten lunch, given that amount of money. Third word, assumptions. Think of assumptions as the foundation or the building blocks of formulating a plan. We make assumptions every day. I'll give you an example. You can say to yourself, I'm going to assume it's going to take 30 minutes to get to my friend's house. There it is. You've made an assumption based on previous experience. You've probably given yourself a little extra room, even if traffic is bad. Or you may say to yourself, I think it's going to cost so many dollars. So that's how much you put in your pocket before you leave the house. Fourth word, milestones. A valuable event. Simple definition. If you want a technical definition, we could say that a milestone is an objective, auditable event that adds value to your company. All right? What are some examples? Well, new research data, new clinical data, a new prototype, a new beta customer, certainly FDA approval. All of these are examples of a milestone. Now, you, your customers, and your investors all will figure out what are good milestones for your company. Here's the subtle point about risk, though. Risk is half of what any good milestone should also reduce. It should add value and reduce risk. And why is that? Let's take for granted that you have a great product idea and a huge market potential. Why do investors shy away from investments? Because if the risk is too high. Therefore, by noting your milestones and what you've achieved in reduced risk, it makes you a more valuable investment, more palatable investment. So don't forget to highlight the risk reduction in your milestones when you talk to investors. What are our four words? Constraints, time and money. Number two, a plan. We create a plan to negotiate the constraints. Number three, we formulate assumptions. They're building blocks and foundational to create that plan. And number four, milestones, goals that we're going to achieve both along the way and the goal that we're looking to achieve at the end. So let's take those four words and let's put them into a thesis statement for these modules. Ready? We're going to make assumptions to formulate a plan that navigates constraints to achieve our milestones. I know, it's a mouthful, but it's a really good one because these are things we do all the time. So let's apply these words to everyday situations using life as an analog. First example, making a list of tasks before something can happen. Something as simple as leaving for work in the morning. You have to get ready, you have to make lunch, and you have to turn off the lights to leave the house. Going on vacation, another something that has to get done. You're going to pack, you have to actually make your vacation arrangements, board your pet, turn down the heat. So we make a list of tasks that have to be completed before something can happen. In this case, leaving the house. Example number two, budgeting for a vacation. Do you remember back in 2008 A word came out called staycation because we were just in the middle of the Great Recession and everybody had less disposable income. So you had less money, you stayed at home and had vacation. Bottom line is, if you have $500 in your pocket or $5,000 in your pocket, two very different vacations. The message is we all know how to budget for a vacation given the money we have. Example number 3, refueling your car. Here's the situation. You're driving down the highway in a different state from where you live, and you don't want to run out of gas, right? None of us. So you're watching the exits and you're watching, is there a gas station at every exit? Yes or no? You don't know, you've never been here before. So you're going to watch your gas tank, you're going to watch the exits, and the goal is to refuel your car, let's say, at half a tank, so that you don't run out of gas. Example number 4, meeting a friend for dinner. Let's say I live in North Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I'm going to meet a friend in Boston next Tuesday night at 7 o'clock. I'm going to have to put together a plan with some assumptions that allows me to decide how long it's going to take or how much time I want to take and how much money do I want to spend. So I can walk to the T, we call it the T, the subway near my house. At that point, I have 2 options. Option number 1, take the subway. Now the subway will take about 30 minutes to get there. But I'm going to leave in no extra time, let's say 10 minutes, 40 minutes. There's another issue. Will the subway be there when I arrive, or do I have to wait? I know from past experience it can take up to 15 minutes for the subway to arrive. So 15 minutes of waiting, and I'm going to budget 40 minutes of travel. 55 minutes total from the time I arrive at the station. The subway fare is $2.65. Secondary scenario, taxi. Now at the taxi, there's a taxi stand right there. There could be a taxi waiting, but I also know from previous experience, it could take 10 minutes if I call a taxi, so 10 minutes of waiting time. It can take 15 minutes to get into town, but if there's any traffic, it'll take 25 minutes, so I better budget for 25. So 10 minutes of waiting, 25 minutes of travel, 35 minutes total from the time I'm at the taxi stand. The cost of the taxi, however, is $30. So let's look at this. It can be 55 minutes on the subway, $2.65. It can be 35 minutes on the taxi, but $30. And from those assumptions, I can make my decision. Now, what have we done there? What's the message? I have formulated a plan using assumptions, but in so doing, I have highlighted the constraints. And now I understand the constraints that I'm facing, so I can make a decision. So you see, we already know how to make a plan, develop assumptions, identify constraints. We do it every day. And yet, we so often fail to transfer those learned skills, those vital learned skills, over to our venture. It's as if we're going to pretend that they don't exist as they apply to our venture. Why is that? I'll at least offer one explanation. It's because we want our venture to succeed so badly that in a sense we're willing to ignore or pretend that they're not there, those very constraints. So let me help you with that. I'm going to introduce 2 rules to you that's going to help you acknowledge and work through those constraints. Let's call them new rules. Rule number 1, you may not walk into an investor's office and ask for more money until you have achieved the next milestone in your plan. I'll say it another way. You cannot write a plan that's designed to walk into an investor's office in between milestones. You have to have achieved that milestone. Why? Because then you have a story to tell. You can walk in and say, look what I've done. I've increased value and, as I alluded before, you've reduced risk. Now the whole point of this rule is, number 1, to create the constraint so that you have a good story, but also remember, investors are interested in money. They're interested in knowing that you've reduced risk, they're going to put money in, and more money is going to come out, and that's what you're exemplifying by walking in with a very good story like that. Rule number 2, upon achieving that milestone, you have to have at least 1 year's worth of money in the bank. Why is that? Because it can take up to a year to raise the next round of financing. And whether that's grant money or angel money or venture capital money, it could take an entire year upon achieving it. So, just like using our fuel in the gas tank analogy, you don't want to run out of gas. You must have a year's worth of what we call burn rate. Now, what's burn rate? We'll talk about it later, but in short, it's the amount of cash that you're going to need to keep your company alive, according to your plan, for the next 1 year while you're raising money. Let's put these two rules together. Remember, what was the purpose of the rules? The purpose of the rules was to create two explicit constraints to set you up to succeed, because as I mentioned before, so often researchers and innovators ignore and pretend that those constraints aren't there. They'll acknowledge them in their personal lives, but so often ignore them when it comes to the venture. So, what's the message? The message here is your overall business plan has to include a financial plan. When you walk into an investor's office and say, I've achieved these milestones and I've reduced risk and I've added value, that's what they want to hear. But, and I'll tell you a secret, if you actually can show them that you have incorporated a finance plan as part of a business plan, it will distinguish you from all other of your colleagues in research and innovation, because so often that is left by the wayside.